Live by the sword, die by the sword. He did say that gun deaths were an acceptable side effect of gun rights.
I saw the video of it. His last words were gun violence. I'll just say I think it's very fitting.
Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. To everyone saying that it was such a senseless, violent act, I want you to remind yourself that it was God's plan. I mean, really, it was actually his fault because, he should have been wearing, a bulletproof neck brace or something. I cannot believe he walked out the house without it.
And you know what? There's going to be a lot more of that coming up. Especially at these religious areas, hey, we've had enough of your kind coming after public schools, right? It's about time, churches and Catholic schools and religious schools, it's about time they get their turn. That's what I think. I'm just going to sit back and watch people do it. And I'm going to fucking laugh. I'm laughing about yesterday. You guys want to laugh about us? We're going to laugh about you.
So two things that I want to say that probably will get me in trouble on this app and probably get me flamed, especially by the right. Number one, I think it's kind of poetic justice that the man who was spreading nothing but hatred and, dishonest rhetoric got pew-pewed in the throat so that in his final moments he couldn't, in fact, speak. I think that's just poetic justice. I know that's probably going to get me flamed.
Yes, he deserves to die, and I hope he burns in hell. And I really don't want to hear any moral superiority from the people who were just laughing about undocumented immigrants getting eaten up by alligators. Okay. That motherfucker.
Welcome to Your Leo Nation. I am the Chief Mark Garrett. I've given the Charlie Kirk assassination a great deal of thought. And once again, I waited some time to come on this platform and discuss it. There is a mixture of deep sorrow, deep sadness, and intense anger inside me right now. That's the best way I can describe it. And I was debating on what angle to take on this, what aspect to speak about, really what opinion of mine that I wanted to focus on, what was most important about this. And I have to be honest, I'm not really sure what the most important aspect of this horrible, evil act is. But I have come to the conclusion that I'm going to talk about one of them. And that aspect is the hatred on the left, represented so clearly by those disgusting individuals that you just saw and heard. That's what I'm going to focus on today. I had a conversation yesterday with, and I'll call her a friend. It's not someone that I have spent a great deal of time with in the last couple of decades, but we've known each other for, I think, well over 30 years. And just because I went, really from the cycling world I used to be a part of. And when I left cycling, obviously separated from a lot of people in that world. But we see each other on social media, and she's not of the same political persuasion that I am. We don't share the same philosophies when it comes to strict politics. But I've always respected her. And when there are discussions on social media, she is, for the most part, very respectful. She can be very, very fiery, very stern in her positions, and God bless her for that. But she's respectful. And I reached out to her through social media, and we exchanged numbers and had a wonderful conversation yesterday. And the point of the conversation wasn't to change each other's minds. We knew that was a dead end. But the point of the conversation was to get reacquainted and to acknowledge the fact that she and I, two good people, as the opinions we have of one another, can have difference of opinion on any number of things and still respect and care for each other. It was a very touching conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one with her. And one of the things we did talk about is how we as a society can get to a point where we, for the most part, can have civil discussions, civil disagreements without killing our political opponents. And to that end, to that point, I want to talk about this mantra about violence. All violence is unacceptable. By the way, which I don't agree with. If someone's attacking me or attacking my family, I'm going to use violence to stop the attack, to stop the threat, the threat. So I'm not a believer that all violence is immoral, all violence is wrong, we should eliminate all violence, because there are some people out there who are going to use violence illegally and immorally. That's never going to come to an end. Sorry. And it's never going to come to an end in my mind that I will use violence to stop that threat. It goes for law enforcement. It goes for someone protecting themselves, protecting the family. So it's an empty statement. All violence is blah, blah, blah. And then the next one is, we need to stop the violence on both sides. Well, look, fine. There is violence coming from both sides, historically. But let's be real. The violence, for the most part, is coming from one side, not the other. And I brought the receipts, and I want to talk about that. So, with that said, let me just open an article up. This is from last year, but this is from Newsweek. And again, I try to bring you publications and sources that aren't necessarily considered conservative. And Newsweek is certainly not. Democrats must stop their violent rhetoric. It's an opinion piece. This is from September of 2024. Obviously before the election, which I think is really important, actually. The gentleman's name is Paul de Quinoy, I believe. I apologize for mispronouncing his name. Again, from Newsweek. Violence has no place in America, posted Kamala Harris on Sunday following media reports of the second assassination attempt against former president and 2024 Republican nominee Donald J. Trump. Second assassination attempt. Second. In a longer statement, Harris claimed to be deeply disturbed by the possible assassination attempt of former President Trump, adding, "I condemn political violence. We all must do our part to ensure that this incident does not lead to more violence." What does she mean by that? Obviously, the insinuation is clearly that people on the right, MAGA, conservatives, regular Americans don't retaliate and probably try to harm her or somebody on the left. If Harris is so very disturbed, quote unquote, she should do her part to tell her party to refrain from dangerous pro-violence rhetoric. Since Trump's election in 2016, Democrats, including Harris's own campaign, have made a regular habit of calling the leader of the opposition a threat to democracy. Representative Daniel Goldman, Democrat, New York, menacingly summed up his party's message in a televised interview with former Biden White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki last November. Trump, he said, has to be eliminated. That's quotes. Has to be eliminated. David Plouffe, I don't know how to say his last name, a senior advisor to the Harris campaign, is on record saying it is not enough to simply beat Trump. He must be destroyed thoroughly. His kind must not rise again. Does that sound civil to you? Does that sound approachable? Does that sound, quote unquote, inclusive, a word that the left likes to use so much? Does that sound kind, peaceful? that their kind must be eliminated. Some prominent Democrats, including President Joe Biden, failed 2016 Democrat candidate Hillary Clinton, and former Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill have compared Trump to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Let me stop right there. I've seen this asked before. I've asked it before, in person to people. And we know the history of Trump and other conservatives being called Nazi or Nazi-like or not Hitler or Hitler-like or Nazis or Nazi-like. It's still happening today. I mean, literally today, it's still happening a couple of days after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Let me ask you this question. If you were able to go back in time, get your little time machine and go back to, say, 1939 or 1937, and with the knowledge that you have today of what evil Adolf Hitler committed, and you were able to go to Nazi Germany knowing what you know now about Adolf Hitler, and you have the opportunity to assassinate him, to kill him, would you do it? I would. Tell you right now. If I knew in 1937 what we all know now, and I might be able to prevent the slaughter of up to 100 million people that his aggression resulted in, would I take him out? Absolutely. So when a group of people or specific individuals refer to Donald Trump over and over and over and over, and people like Charlie Kirk over and over and over and over as Adolf Hitler, do you think it's even possible that you might encourage some individual to do what they tried to do to Donald Trump twice in 2024, and what an individual succeeded in doing to Charlie Kirk on September 10th of 2025? We all know what the answer is. But the Democrats and the left wing, same thing, and certain individuals continue that rhetoric today. So have, referring to calling Trump Nazi, so have numerous legacy media outlets that lean strongly Democratic. In December, Harris said in a televised interview that they were right to do so. In January, Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat, Tennessee, called Trump, quote, a traitor to the United States of America, unquote, and may represent crazy Mad Maxine Waters, I put that in there, Democrat California, falsely accused Trump supporters of preparing for a civil war. Biden has further labeled Trump and his supporters a threat to this nation, the very soul of this country, the very foundations of our republic, and everything America stands for. In a widely publicized private donor call that was leaked just 5 days before the first assassination attempt against Trump in July, the incumbent president announced that it's time to put Trump in a bullseye, a remark later acknowledged to NBC News as a mistake. And that's all we got out of it. It's a mistake. Not that it was inflammatory, not that it might encourage or incite somebody to do something as evil as we saw happen to Charlie Kirk and to Donald Trump being shot. Just it was a mistake. Just brush it off. Off we go. By the way, and I'm probably getting out of order here, but it's on my mind right now. And we'll hear about this a little bit later, but Charlie Kirk, the accusations are that he's inciting people, and Charlie Kirk had this coming. As these people I played at the very beginning of this podcast, as they said that he had it coming, I'm paraphrasing. He deserved it. He had it coming. He should have expected this. What do you expect is going to happen when you do these things? So for years, when Donald Trump and conservatives, and Charlie Kirk, by the way, all those years ago, since his early 20s, when I first became aware of him, if you refer to them and people like him, people like me who have a particular political philosophy, who believe in the rule of law, if you call us Nazis and Hitler and tyrants and people who want to overthrow the founding fathers' foundation of this country, if you call those names, how come you don't explain away January 6th because of that? How come you don't say, well, Democrats, this is our fault because we were calling all of these people evil Nazis and fascists and white supremacists and white Christian nationalists. We were calling them all of these names. We were telling them they were the same as Adolf Hitler. So shouldn't we expect that they crash the Capitol after an election that they feel was illegitimate? How come they don't turn their own rules on themselves? Because they're hypocrites. Because they know what they're saying is not true. They know that Charlie Kirk didn't deserve this. He did nothing to deserve this. They know Donald Trump has done nothing to have been a 2-time assassination target. They don't play by their own rules, ladies and gentlemen. You know it, and I know it. After the first attempt on Trump's life, back up here. As of 2015, Harris supporter Rick Wilson, co-founder of the ethically troubled anti-Trump Lincoln Project, told MSNBC, quote, they were still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, unquote. In August 2020, Harris replied, does one of us have to come out alive when asked on Ellen DeGeneres' television show if she would rather be stuck in an elevator with Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions? DeGeneres and the studio audience laughed along with Harris. Last year, House Delegate Stacey Plaskett, Democrat, told MSNBC that Trump needs to be shot. That's a quote, ladies and gentlemen. Trump needs to be shot. After the first attempt on Trump's life, former Biden White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield told CNN that Democrats should turn their fire on Donald Trump, quote, unquote. Like I said, I had a hard time deciding on how to approach this with you on this episode. Because again, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of grief on my part as well. But I'm angry about this. And I'm angry about the absolute dishonesty coming from the left, coming from people I see on social media saying, well, there's violence on both sides. There is violent rhetoric on both sides. It's a lie. I'm not talking about in absolute terms. Nothing's absolute. I'm talking about where the heavy preponderance of this is coming from. And it's coming from one side and not the other. Democrat calls to violence are not limited to Trump. In June 17, an angry supporter of radical left Senator Bernie Sanders, you know who he is, the self-identified Democrat socialist, take out the Democrat, if you ask me, who had publicly posted, time to destroy Trump and company. Opened fire on a congressional baseball game, nearly killing then House Majority Whip and current Majority Leader Representative Steve Scalise, and wounding 5 others. In May 2020, Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat, now Senate Majority Leader. Remember, this is last year. This is before the election, so some of these titles have changed. Majority Leader declared that conservative Supreme Court Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch would pay the price if they ruled against abortion rights. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade 2 years later, U.S. Marshals arrested an armed suspect outside Kavanaugh's home who allegedly written plans to murder 3 conservative justices. In August 2023, another man telephoned a death threat against Chief Justice John Roberts, a crime for which he was later sentenced to 14 months in prison. I don't know. Maybe there are written death threats to the liberal Supreme Court justices. I don't know if they're out there, folks send them to me. And again, it may be real, but they certainly are far enough in between that we don't hear about them a lot. I don't know of any. There probably are, but we know for sure this is out there. These people are out there. And it goes on for another paragraph, and just for time's sake, I'm not going to read it. But I will move to the second and final article. This is from Miranda Devine in the New York Post. And this was recent, unlike the other one from last fall. Charlie Kirk's assassination is latest evidence that U.S. is suffering from an epidemic of leftist violence. This is September 11th, the day after Charlie was assassinated. We are suffering through an epidemic of leftist violence. The ruthless assassination of a conservative youth leader, Charlie Kirk, 31, at a crowded campus event in Utah on Wednesday. It's the latest manifestation of the hateful rhetoric aimed at President Trump and his MAGA movement. And that's the important thing, ladies and gentlemen. And I talk about this a lot on this show, that and in my personal life, dealing with, with friends and acquaintances, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, when people call the president or called Charlie Kirk or anybody in public life a Nazi, and people like you, they're talking about me. They're talking about other black conservatives. They're talking about gay conservatives or lesbian conservatives. They're talking about immigrant conservatives from Central South America, from Eastern Europe, from Asia. They're talking about these individuals. They're talking about single moms that are struggling, that have a conservative philosophy. They're talking about individual Americans when they call leaders of the party or a movement Nazi. They're talking about me, and they're talking about many of you listening to this show. It is a sad irony that Kirk's shockingly public murder happened the day before the trial begins of Ryan Ruth, one of the alleged assassins who tried to rub out Trump during the 2024 campaign. Kirk understood the consequences of the escalating violent rhetoric on the left, as he and Trump kept winning the hearts and minds of a new generation, especially among young men with logic and common sense. And I understand why Charlie Kirk was such a threat to the left. It wasn't because he was hateful. It wasn't because he was racist. And by the way, these memes that are posted, these snippets of what Charlie Kirk said, that's what they are. They're snippets. The left rarely puts anything in context. If a snippet is going to play to their opinion, to their bias, to make their point, they'll take it out of context and use it as a foil whenever they can. And calling him racist or homophobic, it's a lie. The man had principles, and he was willing to talk to anybody and listen to their point of view, as any of us can go online, and I did very often most of the days of the week, and watch at least a minute of Charlie Kirk, just some short reaction sometimes. But back to my point about why the left is so afraid of him and afraid of his movement, which, thank God, was not assassinated, was not murdered on September 10th. That lives, it thrives, and it grows. So I have bad news for the left from that point of view. You didn't do anything with your rhetoric. And that monster who murdered Charlie Kirk didn't do anything. But why are they so afraid? Didn't do anything to stop the movement. Be clear on that. They took a wonderful man, husband, father from his family. Why are they so afraid? They're afraid because he very likely single-handedly was responsible for delivering Arizona to Donald Trump's election in November of last year. Through his youth outreach to the young voters and to older voters as well, but specifically to young voters, Charlie Kirk has single-handedly fostered a huge growth in youth conservative thought. And it's going to influence American politics for the next generation. I pray. I believe, but I also pray. I'm hopeful it's going to happen. So from a political point of view, yes, they should be terrified of Charlie Kirk. Absolutely. Assassination culture is spreading on the left, he tweeted, Charlie, 2 months ago. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% said the same thing about Donald Trump. I might stop right there. The article is very lengthy and it has a lot of great stuff in there. But that should be enough. That should be enough to tell you everything you know about the left. If you can find 50% of a political party to agree that it's somewhat or completely okay to assassinate a political opponent just because they are a political opponent, that party has a problem. That party has a problem of morality, and a problem of a lack of respect for human life, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how much more starkly I can put it. That is a problem. Maybe someone should poll the Republicans and see if they feel the same way about their political opponents. I think we all know what the outcome of that poll would be. We'd find a couple of nuts and that'd be about it. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after alleged CEO killer Luigi Mangione. Do you hear what I said? If you didn't know that, they want to name healthcare reform bills, ballots, whatever, after the man who killed a healthcare company CEO in California. I don't know if that's dead or not, but I still think they're trying to do that in California. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback where they're losing an election or losing a court case justifies a maximally violent response. Contrary to the narrative pushed by the left-wing media and fanned by President Joe Biden and his administration, the political violence is almost exclusively from the left, setting the scene where the deadly BLM Antifa riots that engulfed the country in the summer of 2020, which were tacitly encouraged by Democrats like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as a way to destabilize then President Trump and then project their own culpability and motivations onto the January 6th Capitol riot by Trump supporters one afternoon. It's exactly what I said later. It's exactly what I said earlier. And we're hearing it later in this article about the left projecting their motivations and their beliefs onto other people, namely conservatives. Then, of course, Trump was a target of 2 assassination attempts last year, including almost having his head blown off, but miraculously tilted it to the right at the right moment for the bullet to nick his ear. And can you imagine? The same people who are cheering, who are celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination would have done the same thing with Donald. By the way, I think would have been 10 times the cheer and the glee if Donald Trump had been assassinated. And there I will in this article. Again, it goes on and on. I encourage you to look it up. Miranda Devine is just that. She's a brilliant lady, and you can find her a lot of places, but check her out there in the New York Post and her opinion. I want to encourage all of us to stand our philosophical ground, stand our principled ground. If you don't stand up for it, then they aren't principles. It's as simple as that. Charlie Kirk put himself out there knowing just how dangerous it was to do so. He was a man of deep, unshakable faith. He knew what he believed, he knew why he believed it, and he was not afraid to put himself out there as a target. And I mean that in a political sense, but also in a mortal, physical sense. And the reason I believe that Charlie Kirk had such courage and such conviction is because of his stated and clear relationship with Jesus Christ. He was unabashed about it. He was proud of it. He was grateful for it. And today, I believe he is with his Lord and Savior and being told over and over, job well done. Charlie Kirk, God bless you. God bless your family. God bless the United States of America. For your Leo Nation, I am the Chief, Mark Garrett.